running a business is a tough and lonely journey. Welcome to the Executives on the Front Lines podcast, where business owners and C-suite executives like you will get real answers to your everyday business problems. I'm your host, Jeff Pelaccio, and together we will learn from senior leaders who have occupied every top box of a company's org chart for every size organization and who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. Welcome to another episode of the Executives on the Front Lines podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Pelaccio, and today we are continuing our discussion on the best ways to close out 2024 while planning 2025 in a world of uncertainty. I'm here to welcome two experts, two fantastic people, Ellza Malok, who is our residential CMO rooted in data science and psychology-based marketing. She helps companies in the U.S. and abroad. Ellza lives in Chicago by way of Kosovo. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but hopefully I did. Our other subject matter expert is Mark Derr, coming from warm Scottsdale. And he is our CEO, CFO advisor, business coach, and former business owner. Welcome, Ellza and Mark, to the podcast today.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great. So we're recording here in early December 2024. The election, November 5th election, occurred about a month ago. So just talk about your advice and insight on best ways to close out the year, as well as with all the uncertainty in terms of what happened in the election, how to plan for 2025. Ellza, would you want to start?
Yeah, so I think the good news about it is the uncertainty is starting to become a little more certain. We know a bit about some key initiatives that are coming into 2025. We can use those as leverage points, and really we can keep our teams informed. And I think transparency is a really, really powerful element to include in your December close, especially if you have team members that aren't certain about where the initiatives are lying. There's so much technology that is coming out. So the good news is the uncertainty is starting to fade, and we're entering a period of a little bit more certainty around what could transpire next year. And how you leverage that is really getting and coalescing through that final stretch, especially if you're in tech or life sciences, where sometimes you wait until the very last day to get as much books closed as possible, or as if you're in manufacturing, to get as many trucks out there as possible. You're not really thinking about 2025. You're just trying to get your year closed. And that's a normal thing to do in this time of year. You just want to make sure that you're still having that team confidence to boost in, to say, we're kind of all in this together. We're going to figure it out together, and kind of keep your ear to the ground as to what could transpire next year around it. But you don't want that to be 90% of your, or more than 90% of your effort. You want to allocate at least 20 to 25% of your effort to planning for the following year, because things are going to change. And that is a key component that is really important for you to stay informed.
Yeah, that's great. Mark, your thoughts on it?
Well, this time of year, there's always a lot going on. And this year, even more so, with everything going on in culture and politics, the economy, and world events. And it's really easy to get distracted. We all get distracted. In college football, however, we're in the conference championship season, which is a really great time of the year. And one thing that separates the teams that are now playing in these championship games from those who have packed it in and are at home is really deliberate and consistent execution of the fundamentals. They do this really well. And we know that businesses, should have prepared or are nearing to complete a plan, as Ellza described, for a budget and a plan for 2025. And let's briefly talk about maybe just two fundamentals that really must be executed well in their plan. First, obviously, top line sales. You really need a well thought out, actionable plan for 2025 sales ready to go and roll out after the holidays. An idea, how about putting a meeting with your sales team on the calendar for the first week in January? The purpose? Have that sales team tell you and the executive team what they are doing, their specific actions to bring in the sales that are planned for Q1, not necessarily entire year, just the first quarter. Ask them questions, offer them help. This sends a message, I think, that excellent sales performance is one of the fundamentals that really needs to be executed very well. Figure out maybe a creative way to challenge them. For example, I recently completed this exercise with a client. We ran sales report for 2024, sales by customer, sorted, high to low. We took a look at the top 20%. We ran the same reports for 2023 and 2022. What changed? Who dropped down the list? Or worse, who dropped off? What happened? It could be some low-hanging fruit out there that perhaps the sales team should be taking a look at. One more fundamental, the obvious fundamental, cash flow and profit. You do have an expense budget plan by department for 2025 completed or are getting ready to complete and lock in before year end. If you don't, you should. How about today? Put a meeting on the calendar with your department heads for early February for a budget to actual expense review for January. Have them explain the major variances. That sends a signal. Executing fundamentals well, managing expenses is really important. Cash flow is really important. Also, kind of figure out a creative way to challenge the management team. For example, some companies authorize first-class air travel for their executive team and company officers. Very common, not a big deal. As the boss, tell the team, in 2025, I'm sitting in coach. Will this significantly impact the P&L or the cash flow? Probably not much. Will a move like this percolate through the organization, sending a signal that this year we're really going to execute the fundamentals well? I think it probably should.
Yeah, those are great points. Ellza, any thoughts based on Mark's insight?
I think Mark lays out some really good practical opportunities. The way I tend to lay out my December, really, because you don't have the full month. You have about 2.5, 3 weeks. Is the first week is a really like a intelligence collection week of coalescing your team, coalescing some other research that you can go into and kind of say, let's brainstorm and bring everything in place. And then when you get to week 2, you start to kind of put out those key strategies, those departmental level strategies that Mark is talking about, and you have each of those kind of run through, knowing that you have a central vision of where you're going to go, and that requires some pre-planning on the executive team for sure. And then by week 3, it's really around like that solidification process of what doesn't work, what is feasible, what is not. It's a lot of budgeting discussions around what's in budget. Do we have the cash flow for it? It's a lot of those like negotiation components. But I often think that, especially in today, or particularly in this year, because of the election cycle, because of post-COVID, all these elements, I'm anticipating a lot of those solidification processes won't really occur until the first week of January, when people have a little bit time to marinate through all of those ideas. And that's okay. The goal for that, though, is for you to have a clear vision and some really outlined opportunities of what you're going to leverage for 2025. And what trends do you want to follow? What concerns do you want to address, or risks that you want to mitigate before you begin the rollout? But when you kind of follow an inclusive process that way of bringing in departmental leaders and managers in that research phase, it makes the other two significantly easier, because you kind of get buy-in throughout the process, So your rollout is also much more seamless in many instances.
Yeah, I love that advice. Obviously, there's a lot of the speed of change is unlike any period in corporate industrial history, right? So what key hot topics, key trends do you both see out there that C-suite business owners, et cetera, should be keeping an eye on?
From my end, a lot of it are really upside opportunities, with the opportunities for AI to further, enhance your business capabilities, enhance your profit optimization capabilities. That's really important. From a marketing positioning perspective or a brand positioning perspective, it's around really understanding your relationship with your customers and how that impacts your brand and overall your equity. And then for organizations that are potentially looking to grow in different ways or potentially exit a piece of their business or what have you, it's really kind of thinking about how do you position yourself, knowing that there's a ton of dry powder out there, knowing that next year there's probably going to be a surplus in spend within private equity, that if that is the goal, you should start kind of working through, well, how do I maximize my EBITDA? What strategies I go into? That's what I mean by that strategic vision, because then you can leverage these key trends of AI, new emerging markets, the speed of change and the ability to pivot. All of those kind of get into consideration, but the weight of them changes depending on what your end goal is.
I see a lot of optimism out there. I think there's somewhat cautious optimism, but I think there's a lot of expectation of 2025 being a potentially and likely a pretty good year. And so I think business owners really are looking forward to that. And that's why I think it's important for the business owners, the executive team to really get their team thinking about and engaged in performance in 2025. Because with the expectation of a good year, they want to capitalize on that, capitalize on things that are going on, hopefully the very good things in the economy, taking advantage of it and making 2025 a really good year.
Yeah, I think the trend overall is, 2024 was a little bit more contractive in many instances where it was continuing to run lean, continuing to, optimize. I think 2025 is much more of an innovative stage where growth opportunities are there. And depending on your strategies, you have some really advantageous opportunities, whether it be in the US, given our more US focused strategies that are coming into the new administration, or even moving into new emerging markets and taking advantage of the opportunities that are potentially coming in, whether it be through private equity or other funding opportunities that are just going to be more available next year than haven't been in the last year.
Yeah, no, and most presidential election years are very constrictive in terms of spend. But you bring up a great point. I mean, a lot of things we're talking about here, the vast majority have to do with the U.S. economy and U.S. business. But I know, Ellza, you do a lot of work for international companies. Any other insights there internationally?
I know that I was just conversing with a few of my colleagues in both Eastern and Western Europe and in the Middle East, and a lot of it is really kind of working through ways on fostering further partnership with U.S. companies. So for those that have the aspiration to move internationally, there is some opportunity there for you to really get connected with businesses that want that collaboration. I think international companies have a little bit more of an uphill battle because we're going to be much more centrally focused coming into 2025. So there's some elements that they have to juggle, whether it be regulation or tariff focused, or even just how to enter new markets for it. So I think it's, right now it's a little bit more of an advantageous market for the US for if they do plan on, contributing to international markets. It's very much there. It's just got to be done in a way that keeps their financial progress organized and really their cash flow. That's probably their biggest concern in a lot of middle market companies, especially that have run pretty lean.
Ellza, Mark, any final thoughts?
Yeah, Jeff. First of all, thanks for having me on. This is I really appreciate this opportunity. I think for some folks, there's a temptation to sit on the sidelines and wait and see what shakes out. Wait and see what's going to happen. Whether you're waiting for January 1st, January 19th, or 20th, or 21st, or even 3 months from next Tuesday, is kind of wait and see what happens so you don't make a mistake. But I was just perhaps your competition may not be sitting on the sidelines. They may be making a concerted effort to really execute a plan, to develop a plan and execute it very well, and take advantage of a train that's probably moving down the tracks pretty quick.
Yeah, I like that, and I always love your sports analogies. I love that touch, Mark. Thank you, Ellza.
I'll echo some very similar sentiments to Mark around, doing nothing is actually more of a risk now than doing anything, because of the rate of change. So some key areas that I would focus on is start to make decisions as informed as you can. Be prepared to pivot because the rate of change is vastly accelerating, and I think it's going to continue to do that. And make sure that you kind of bring everybody along for the ride. It's very easy for C-suites to say we should totally do this, and then not get buy-in with the rest of their organization, and now you've got an uphill battle. But the more unified you could become, the dare I say dangerous you can kind of become in the marketplace, and that could be an advantage next year.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, we'll include a link in the podcast description to set up a meeting with one or both of you. So I want to thank you both for being on the podcast today, and wish you and your loved ones a Merry Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Executives on the Front Lines. If you are interested in learning more about today's guests, you can schedule a 15-minute call with them by scanning the QR code or using the link in the episode description. Please join me every 2 weeks to learn from another great leader sharing insight that can help you and your business.